Dungeons and Dragons, a game known for taking the mythology from all around the world, whether it's, fucking Chernobog, Zeus, dragons, dwarves, goblins. Well, they're known for putting all of that together. And they've also decided that now it's theirs. And so they're thinking about shutting down other people that are making content about Dungeons and Dragons. Here we go. The fuck? Yeah, that's basically it. Hasbro ruined Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. Yes, so far. They probably will do more. I've never watched this channel before. I don't know what to expect.
What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you an update of sorts to a video I did a few days ago talking about D&D's OGL drama and what that could mean for video games in particular, as this channel is centered around video games. As the title surely told you, Paizo, the publisher of Pathfinder, has put out a statement around D&D's...
Pathfinder, for anybody who doesn't know, is like, it's like Turtle WoW. Like, it's like a no, it's too unique of an example. It's like a mod for Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, an offshoot. Potential
new OGL and what they plan to do going forward. Though to give a little bit of background to this video and fill in the people who aren't aware, the very short version of this is that for a couple decades, Dungeons & Dragons has used an OGL to allow people to make and create for Dungeons & Dragons.
OGL, again, open game license. I don't know if he explained the acronym, but that's what it means.
Without having to sign contracts, all that stuff. And a lot of people have used it. Businesses have grown up around this, as the wording was centered around it being a permanent thing.
Yes.
Very recently, talk has been around about how D&D is undermonetized, and a new OGL has been floated and leaked, and we were supposed to see that update literally the day this video is going live, though I imagine it has been delayed. But the new update...
I feel like if the update's getting delayed, then they're probably not going to do it, or if they do end up doing it, it's not going to be in the same way.
The OGL, or new version, essentially made it impossible for third-party creators to do anything with Dungeons & Dragons without turning literally all of it over to Wizards of the Coast to use however they see fit, which needless to say would...
Is that still not the case? Because my understanding is that if you make fan art of something, the official people that make the, like, if you make fan art of, let's say, like World of Warcraft or something like that, any sort of IP, they can just turn around and use your fan art because it's technically their IP. Maybe I don't understand this, but that was what I thought.
Destroy that community. But in addition to third-party creators around the TTRPG, a lot of other companies use that OGL for a variety of things. Pathfinder uses it for most of their system, and we'll talk more about that here, obviously, as we move through this statement. But my own personal interest in why I'm talking about this on a video game channel is mostly due to the fact that a lot of my favorite games use a version of the OGL, or D&D systems and rules, and thus the specifics of this affect great things outside of just the TTRPG space. Now,
that's what I'm wondering is, like, in my opinion, I feel like rolling a D20 or like a D6, D4, D10, whatever, I feel like that's so common now and so many games do it. Dungeons and Dragons doesn't own that anymore. So, like, whenever you really break it down, what does Dungeons and Dragons really own? Because they certainly don't own dragons. They don't own dungeons either. They don't own half of the mythological animals that the game is built under. Like, if you look at a lot of the monsters in Dungeons and Dragons, even the more, fucking, like, arcane ones, the ones that you might not think of, or, the super powerful ones that are just, like, fucking these, like, weird monsters that are, like, cosmic horrors. Well, guess where the cosmic horrors came from? Well, a lot of them came from Lovecraft, or they came from Greek mythology, or they came from something else. So, like, what do they really fucking own? I don't know. I'm sure they have some original characters. My understanding is that, like, mind flayers, the things in, like, Baldur's Gate, kind of, those are kind of a Dungeons and Dragons original. Tarask, yeah. But no, I actually heard Tarask was was it like French mythology or something like that? That's what somebody said. So I don't know. They're like Cthulhu? Well, Cthulhu, yeah, they are like Cthulhu, but Cthulhu is H.P. Lovecraft. So, like, what does D&D really own? I feel like the entire thing is derivative.
Official word from Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro, D&D, etc. We have gotten nothing. 2 days ago, they said they'd make a statement soon, and we have yet to hear from them. Well, Paizo got tired of waiting, and yesterday, from the time of this video, has released their own statement and what they plan to do, and I think this statement alone clarifies a lot of questions I had about the state of Pathfinder, because Pathfinder publishes, via a license, the Pathfinder video games, which are a huge feature on this channel. Wrath of the Righteous is a personal favorite of mine, and what doesn't really feature on the channel, but something true of myself, I own a significant amount of Paizo's Pathfinder products that are on the shelf behind me right as I speak these words into a microphone, so I have a lot of personal interest. Which brings us to Paizo's statement. The long and short of it is, they're planning on a system-neutral open RPG license to flat-out replace the OGL with. They're doing this in partner with a lot of other people, and once the license is fully developed, they plan on handing it off to a non-profit company that deals with open source as a rule, thus making a license people can use to publish things in a system-neutral manner, and then giving it to a neutral third party that, as a nonprofit, has no interest in changing it anyway. But from there, let's actually start breaking down the statement and what it actually says, etc. Though, do keep in mind, I'm not a lawyer, and if you want the legal specifics of all this, outside of just he said, she said, I guess we're all going to have to wait for the Legal Eagle video that I'm sure will happen eventually. But to kick it off,
I think we'll have to really wait for Wizards of the Coast to clearly define what they're actually going to do.
Paizo essentially says that, like everyone else, they've been waiting on what Wizards of the Coast is actually going to do. As from Paizo's standpoint, the OGL has been a mutually beneficial license that should not, and according to them, cannot be revoked, which is what prompted Paizo to make the statement to begin with. From here, they make the very direct claim that they...
I do find it to be very problematic that you can say everything is open and you can do whatever you want with it, and then you can just change your mind. I don't think that you should be able to do that because people have already invested money into this. It's effectively a contract that you entered into. Now, I can understand if you change it and it's like they're using stuff after the changes. So like theoretically, if like Dungeons and Dragons did an expansion after they made this change to the license and then they're using the stuff from the expansion, I can see how obviously that would be problematic. But like if you tell people it's okay and they're doing it, and then you can't just change your fucking mind randomly and then say, hey, we're going to take your fucking money. It's not fair. It's like effectively this is not good for anyone. It's predatory. It's not beneficial. And you're effectively using a legal system to steal money from people under a false pretense. That's effectively what's happening.
Do not believe that the OGL 1.0 or 1.0A were intended to be revocable or able to be deauthorized, however you want to put it. And this is largely due to Paizo's own history as a company, as I'm sure many of the people watching this video, even from my own audience, are perfectly aware. Paizo kind of split off from D&D. They used to work there. Both the owner and president were leaders at the Dungeons & Dragons team at one point. The people involved used to publish a magazine for D&D, so they're very aware of the wording and what the intent was. The co-founder of the law firm that Paizo uses, Brian Lewis, who works at Azora Law, was the attorney for Wizards who came up with the legal framework for the OGL when it was...
So he was the one who wrote the ancient text.
Created. Paizo's also worked very closely with Ryan Dancy, who was the person who made the OGL in the first place. So, using all of that very direct involvement, Paizo feels that...
So that means that if it ever did come to legal... they could actually use the people that wrote it originally to discern what the intent was. There would never be like, it's not like, oh, this was written 300 years ago. We can't ask the people that wrote it, what did you mean by this?
revoked, that it's not intended to be so, nor can they do so. And they go on to say that they are prepared to argue that in court if need be, but frankly they would rather not do so because they don't have any interest in Wizards' new OGL, and that they have a different idea to begin with. Now
that is crazy. And like the fact that they're willing to go to war against Wizards of the Coast, which is owned by Hasbro, that means that they probably have an extremely strong case. I mean, yeah, are they that guy? I feel like he might be that guy. I mean, shit. Yeah, fuck Hasbro. Well, no, it's like, obviously, like, Hasbro is, like, on no level of, like, fucking Disney, right? But Hasbro and, like, Wizards of the Coast is, like, a massive fucking company. It's, like, a million, hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe $1 billion company at this point. I don't know. And these people think that they have a chance at winning this at all. There's a reason for it.
Next section talks about Paizo's evolution. You see, originally, when they brought out Pathfinder First Edition, they kept a lot of the Wizards' wording and systems because it was expeditious to do so and the OGL existed. However, as Pathfinder has grown in popularity and extended its reach, and in their non-RPG products, including their novels, they leaned into their own stuff rather than the Dungeons & Dragons stuff. And when Pathfinder 2e came around, the OGL was much less impactful, and I mentioned this part in particular because in my own previous video, I talked about how Pathfinder 2e didn't really use much of the OGL. And here we have in Paizo's own words saying that Pathfinder 2e is published under the OGL, but it doesn't actually really use any of it. And they only published it with the OGL to allow other companies to use Paizo's work, which means a few things. For starters, Pathfinder 1e doesn't get anything actively published for it at this point from Paizo, so that's not really a concern. And from this wording, it sounds like Pathfinder 2e will just switch to this new license that they're making, which should pretty much resolve any issues. Their currently planned stuff that's already using that license and is in the pipeline will continue as expected, but they'll be switching it to their own license as soon as they can. Now from there, however, Paizo goes on to basically explain their plans for an open RPG creative license that they are referring to as ORC, or the ORC, and that the...
So basically they're saying that if Dungeons & Dragons isn't going to do this, they'll do it themselves, just with some different variants. That's pretty crazy.
License will be built system agnostic for independent game publishers under the legal guidance of Azora Law, a law firm that works for Paizo, as well as several other game publishers. However, Paizo is going to pay for all of this legal work. They then invite more people to join them, but currently Paizo, Kobold Press, Chaosium, Legendary Games, Rogue Genius, Green Ronin, and a variety of others have agreed to participate and work to make this license the most useful it can be. And then the last part of the statement clarifies a few things as well, mostly stuff I've already mentioned, that the ORC will not be owned by Paizo, nor will it be owned by any company who makes money publishing RPGs. Azora Law is going to handle the legal side of this to make sure that no company being bought, sold, changing management, or attempting to rescind any rights, nullify sections, etc. will be possible, and then that after the license is complete, they plan on handing it off to a nonprofit. Then they explain that as it stands, with several projects actually being printed right now, that a few months of products will still have the OGL 1.0A in there, and then while the creative license is still being worked on, they simply will continue publishing without a license, period, because as they stated farther up in the statement, they don't actually need to use the OGL at this point. And then
so what they're saying effectively is that their own work has diverged so much from Dungeons & Dragons at this point, it's no longer necessary for them to rely on on that license in the first place. It's like PoE and Diablo. Yeah, it's like Genshin and Breath of the Wild. It's like there's a lot of games that originally they might have started as kind of an offshoot, but they've evolved into their own thing.
Once this new license is finished, they'll be using it instead. And then they finish out the statement by taking a couple shots at some of the wording that has been used with the OGL changes, which was fun. God. But now that that's all out of the way, let's actually talk about what this means. So, personally, I am incredibly happy to see this. for a variety of reasons, but not least because if you follow the channel at all, Pathfinder's a big deal to me. I enjoy it a lot, so I think it's good that they're moving away from D&D altogether, even its license, and that they're doing so in a way that benefits everyone, not just themselves. But furthermore, it also assuages some concerns of my own about the potential for further Pathfinder games, what the licensing situation around that would look like.
I think it also goes to show that, like, it's probably not as possible for them to just, like, rescind everything if these guys think that they can go to court and win a case about it, especially against Hasbro, billion-dollar company.
Even just beyond video games, knowing exactly what's going on with Pathfinder and Starfinder on the TTRPG level, which I also purchased things for, is nice to know. So to wrap this up, overall, this seems like a really great solution for just about everybody, at least at face value, though obviously we'll know a little more once the license is actually in place. But as someone, and most relevantly to the channel, I would imagine, as a channel, knowing that there will be an option for people who want to use these types of rule sets and bring them to video games without having to be forced into a deal with Wizards of the Coast specifically is honestly great news, because some of my favorite games use some version of the systems or just straight up...
I think that's what Wizards of the Coast is going to realize, is that there are so many things that you really just can't copyright, and the uniqueness of Dungeons and Dragons is not offset by the amount of annoying fucking hoops that somebody has to jump through in order to use their content. It's kind of like what happened, I think I used this example before, it's what happened with Nintendo games on YouTube. Like, obviously you had people that were making video games on YouTube, of course, video games on YouTube, videos about Nintendo games on YouTube, excuse me. It's very late, it's so late, it's early now. And obviously there weren't as many of them though. And most other people, why would you go and make content for a Nintendo game whenever you have to deal with this big annoying creator program, whenever you can just make videos for any other game and not have to deal with any of it at all? So it's such common sense that somebody's going to just go and do something else, assuming that the two options are relatively equal.
OGL altogether. And while several of them have direct deals and contracts with Wizards of the Coast and don't rely on the OGL, changes to that system and burning your own trust and bridges makes people hesitant to do business with you, which could result in fewer games.
Nobody
but
wants
hopefully
to build
this will be a solution to that, which is why I wanted to cover it. And I'm honestly glad to see Paizo leading the charge on this one, as I am a big fan of Pathfinder. So that is all I've got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned a few things. And by all means, let me know how you feel about this down below, because I must admit I'm very curious how Wizards of the Coast responds now, because it looks like Paizo, rather than trying to fight D&D, is just going their own way altogether. Arguably,
I think that if they just came out and they said, yeah, we were going to do this, but it seems like you guys are going to fucking go ape shit if we do this, so we're not going to do it, I'd be like, okay, fine. That's what they should do.
In a better way for everyone. But that's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.
That's clever. I like that. I'm going to link that for you guys. Consider Hasbro has just made products to tarnish their reputation with this shit. I don't know. I think that also, like,
which, needless to,
there's a good thing where, like, or a good chance that they just simply don't fucking know what they're doing. That's it. They just simply don't fucking know what they're doing. They have people that are in charge of this kind of stuff, and the people don't know how to make the right decisions, and they just made a big fucking mistake. And I think that that's probably true. I think that the leadership for Wizards of the Coast clearly has a problem, because you can't have, like, you can't have this and then right off of this was like the magic 30-year thing. That's like a fundamental disconnect with understanding the player base. So, yeah, I mean, I think that there's probably people in executive leadership that probably should really sit down and, you know, have some focus groups and talk to some actual, you know, go to some comic book stores and talk to some people that actually buy the products. You know what I mean? Because one deserves more attention. Yeah, this is a great fucking video. I like it. I'm going to give him a sub and subscribe to him. I've never watched a video from him before. I'll link it for you guys so you can go ahead and give it some support. They present something that upsets people, only to release a calmer version of it later to give people a feeling that they won. Well, I think it doesn't really matter if the people win or not whenever, like a lot of the stuff, people will just use an offshoot of Pathfinder instead, if that's what they're going to be able to do. Like, there's not probably that big of a difference between the two.